Oh my God, remember that time I had a faux hawk? Gross.
And I had a salmon on my head, as was the style at the time.
Ash and Zach are super smart. They went to college and learned a bunch of stuff. And Bo and Andrew didn't go to college because that's the way life goes sometimes. What happens when you put them together and you try to make them learn? Grab your friends, let's listen together on Get Dumped on an Info Dump podcast.
Welcome to Get Dumped On, an Info Dump podcast. This is the podcast where four friends get together, talk about things that we like, learn a little bit, laugh a little bit. If this is your first time with us, welcome. Let me set the scene for this podcast a little bit. Have you ever been in a group of people, watching a movie, hanging out, whatever? Someone asks some innocuous fact. When was that guy born? Or what year did this happen? And a bunch of people pull out their phones and you start learning together. And then like the next day, your friend comes up to you and is like, hey, I learned that Christopher Walken was a firefighter in 9/11. You're like, what? That's crazy. If you like situations like that, you will love this podcast. And so I'm joined here today with Andrew and Bo. We're all going to be learning. We're going to be the dumpies today. Say hey.
Say hey.
Hey.
Hey, hey. And dumping on us today is going to be Zach with the topic of the apex predators of the sea. Zach, you want to take us away?
Yeah, hi, I'm Zach, and I'm going to talk to you this week about how it was Steve Buscemi who was the firefighter at 9/11.
Yeah, okay.
Oh,
Thank
Steve
you. I was
Buscemi.
going to say,
I'm sorry.
it was definitely not Christopher Walken. Like, hey, the tower's on fire. Hey.
Oh my God.
I'm sorry. I shouldn't have done
I'm sorry to Steve Buscemi and Christopher Walken.
that. People
ever
falling
listen
from
to
the
this.
sky.
Oh my God.
But that's exactly what I'm talking about.
Yeah. So I was inspired this week by some news stories that have been going around. So this is going to be a topical one, much more topical than usual. Have you been keeping up with Orca news?
I sure have, because you know why? You're talking about my very favorite sea creature, my favorite sea mammal.
Yeah,
Orcas?
your favorite?
Yeah, orcas are my
Orcas?
fucking
I
favorite.
freaking love orcas too, man.
Oh man, this is going to be great. Feel free to butt in if you have any orca facts or orca stories that you like want to include at any point during this episode.
It's the one
so
mammal
many.
I won't punch in the face.
That's great. I love that.
The amount of tongues I've seen people touch, like pet of orcas, is a lot.
There's like slap the tongue a bit.
We've been like when SeaWorld was a thing, they'd bring a kid out in the audience and be like, and the tongue would the orca would flop its fat belly right on that little little area, and then they open his mouth and they're like, pet the tongue, and we're like, why are we doing this? But
He wants to see how you taste.
yeah.
Ooh. So, but what is it that you like?
It gets the taste of the blood of the children, and then it attacks the trainers later on.
But what is it that you like so much about orcas?
That they're pretty much the fucking king of the fucking ocean.
Yeah, baby.
They
look
are
like
like
pandas.
they have no natural
top.
predators.
Exactly. They're number fucking uno.
They
Yeah.
look like pandas. They hang out together in the little orca group.
They're called pods.
I assume they're called
Yes,
a
they're
murder.
called pod.
Oh, okay, pods.
So what's been going on recently is that there's
Is this a
been
pod about pods?
It's a pod about pods.
Oh
it's
my
the pod
God.
pod. Oh my
That's so
God.
cute.
Oh my God.
I
It's the
love
pod
that.
pod.
All right, let's end the podcast
The
now.
pod
We can't
podcast.
top that.
So there's recently been a really dramatic uptick in orcas attacking boats
Anarchy.
in the Strait of Gibraltar in the Iberian Sea, mostly off the coast of Portugal. There has been, since it mostly started in 2020, later in 2020, and since then they've logged a little over 500 interactions with orcas, which is mostly just them popping up and being curious about the boats or the ships. 50 of those interactions involved some sort of physical contact, and in about 20 to 25, I wasn't able to get the exact number, the yachts were directly attacked.
Hell yeah.
And so they
You say yachts, right?
Yeah, yachts.
Yeah, fuck
Yeah.
rich people.
Yeah, fuck yachts, right? And so 3 of them have sank. They've sank 3
That's so
boats
fucking
since
cool.
2020. The first
I'll buy
one
another
was
yacht,
in,
rich bitch.
Yeah, you can afford it, idiot. So in July 2022, they sank a sailboat with 5 people on it. In November 2022, they sank a sailboat with 4 people on it. And in May 2023, so this was actually very recently, they sank a yacht that had 4 people on it. At this point, it's important to note that no wild orcas have ever killed a person And this has not changed. They haven't killed anybody, or a wild orca has never killed a person in any like.
Which is another reason why I fucking love them. They're fucking because they're dope. They know it's like they're respect. We got the land, they got the sea. It's a respect.
Like, we're gonna sink the shit out of your boats, but that's it.
Okay, so
and that's why every time the orca has killed a person, it's been in captivity, and it's mostly been one problem orca. Well, I hesitate to call him a problem. How
dare
orca.
You call him a problem orca? It's not his fault.
No, it's not his fault. He was captured from the sea, and then he was raised in a tank that was too small with 2 bullies. So he was poorly socialized, and he just lashes out. He's killed 3 people out of the 4 people who've been killed by captive orcas.
Bo, did you have a question?
Yeah, can I rain on your parade for a second though about the ship attacks? Didn't it recently come out that they were kind of putting it together that its mother orca is actually training their kids?
Well, so that is something that I'm going to talk about. Yes.
Okay, sorry.
We'll get there. You're jumping ahead.
I didn't know. That's what. Well, he's bringing this all up. I'm like, well, time to fact check this motherfucker. He told me to speak up. He said speak things up, and I like you probably have the first full integration of Bo in a podcast. You want to take that away from me by telling me to wait, but I will.
Mm-hmm.
Carry on.
Okay, so this was Tilikum was the name of the whale. He died recently, but he was he was in captivity for like 30 something years and involved in the deaths of 3 trainers, and it's all very sad because I wouldn't really blame him for it. But we're not going to talk about captive orcas because they make me sad. Instead, we're going to talk about wild orcas because they're awesome. So they've attacked 20 to 25 yachts, and one guy it actually happened to twice. It's a captain named Dan Kriz. And so in all of these attacks, what has happened is that the orcas have gone right for the rudder of the boat, and they just tear it straight off. And then they leave once the boat is
fucking
disabled.
metal. I love that.
I know, it's so great.
There's videos, like people have recorded videos of them doing it. They just go right for the rudder, and they just get their teeth around and just yank it off.
I remember when it first started happening in 2020, videos came out, and they were just like bashing the hulls of the boats. Like, there was these videos of these terrible sounds of these orcas like bashing up these boats, but the fact that they've kind of evolved into just grabbing the rudder and ripping it off is fantastic.
Mm-hmm. So there have been 2 main groups of whales that have been observed doing this, and totaling 9 whales out of the 39 orcas that live in like this region, which is actually a reduced population. There should be more, but there's only 39 that are known. And the main female orca in the area is the mother of most of them and the only adult to participate. Her name is Gladys Blanca, aka White Gladys. They're all named Gladys in some way to keep track of them, like the family lineage, but White Gladys is the one. So with our first dumper chump, there have been a few proposed theories as to why they're doing this. And so
hypotheses.
Hypotheses. So I'm going to give you 4 theories. Tell me which one is not. Tell me which one is not a proposed hypothesis. Okay. So is it A, retaliation from the orcas because of renewed noise after the lull in boats during COVID, or because one was hurt by boats? Is it B, hunting practice? Is it C, a silly little whale fad? Or is it D, the boat's engines make a noise the same frequency that this population of whales use to start fights?
Didn't Bo already say it was hunting practice?
Well, no, I say these are all possible theories except for one of them. There's not one reason why they do it. There's a couple of explanations.
Yeah, I'm just saying like that's.
Oh, yeah.
Bo already said there's one of them, so we can nix that from the list.
Mm-hmm.
Ash, do you know this?
I do.
Why do you always do this? How do you always know
I'm
this?
sorry. I'm really up on the whale news, and Zach and I have talked about it. So
and Ash helped me help me decide what the fake one was.
Oh yeah, I forgot. I did help with that. I did write this.
Bo, what do you got? Please help.
I want to go with motor noise because it sounds
that
cool.
Frequency thing. Yeah, that sounds weird. I don't know if I like.
Are you talking about which one are you taking? He said they are annoyed with the noise after the COVID lockdown started back up. And then he said there's a boat frequency, the frequency of the boats.
Yeah. Boat frequency.
Yeah, that one. I think it's that one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's the one I made up.
Yeah, we're smart.
The first hypothesis is that they are fed up with the boats they've been observed following fishing boats in this area to get bluefin that like comes out of the nets, and so some have been seen with nets hanging off of them, and another has been seen with marks from boats, so it's
From the
possible
propellers.
from the propellers. And so it's possible that White Gladys got too close to a boat or was injured by a boat. It is now teaching the children in her pod to fuck up boats, which is pretty cool.
I would love it if
That's
that were
fucking-
true.
That's so cool.
Mm-hmm. It could be that White Gladys is teaching her kids how to hunt, because I don't know if this is one of the types of whale, one of the types of orca that hunts marine mammals, or if they are just fish hunters, or if they're opportunistic. But one of the ways that they go after like seals and stuff, other orcas, is by disabling like its fins, so that they can like immobilize it in the water and then snap it up. So it could be that she's teaching her kids how to immobilize the boats the way that they immobilize their prey. So that's pretty cool. And it could also just be a weird fad that they're doing now, because sometimes the whales just do weird fads.
And I think it's funny.
Yeah, it's just something that they think is funny, and they communicate it to each other, and we don't understand how they communicate to each other, but they're doing it somehow, which is kind of cool. And so the idea is, so it could be any one of those explanations. It's an ongoing situation, and they're enigmatic critters, so we just don't really know exactly what's going on. But it's a really funny thing that they're doing.
Huh. Cool.
And so part 2 in my notes is orcas be like that. So I just want to talk now about orcas and other fun things that orcas do. And that all kind of have to do with this like weird way that they communicate, and just some orca stories. You want to hear some orca stories, Bo?
Yeah.
Fucking
Oh, sorry,
orc me up, baby.
Yeah, baby. So orcas live in matrilineal pods that are extremely social. So matrilineal means that they trace their like lineage, and their like ancestry is all done through the mother's line. So
They're
what's important-
matrilineal and matrilocal, right? They stay with
Yes.
their mother's pod, or the daughters and the mothers stay together.
Yeah, so the mothers are important. So it's effectively the pods are led by the oldest female in the pod, who can live to be 50 and sometimes 80 years old. And the structure depends on what like individual population of orca, but usually the pods are a mother and her children. So they're a cosmopolitan species, which means that they live in every part of the world. And scientists group them up by type. And there's some debate over whether a type of orca is a subspecies or not, or just like a geographical population of orcas, because they all share the same. Like you look at it and you're like, oh yeah, that's an orca, but some of them, like the eye spots, are a different shape, or they have very specific diets. Like the resident whales in the northern Pacific only eat fish, for example, and some of them only eat marine mammals.
Are there genetic differences between the pods, or no?
I think so, but I'm not sure that they've tested it. I'm not sure that they've been able to get that much orca genetic
I imagine
material.
it's hard from wild orcas.
Yeah. And so the females are dominant and the mamas rule the roost. Bo, if you were an orca, do you think you'd be a fish-eating orca or a mammal-eating orca?
Fish eating, because I respect the mammals. Except fucking seals. Go fuck themselves.
Because I feel like your diet would be mostly seal if you were a mammal-eating.
Fuck them. That's all I have to say.
Fuck 'em.
Would you be the type of orca that takes a little nibble from the seal and then flings it 100 feet up in the air?
Yeah, I'm just playing. We're just playing. It's a prank, bro. It's a prank, seal.
It's just a prank, bro.
So the resident whales, they're called, up in the northern Pacific, like off the coast of Alaska or like British Columbia. They live with their mothers their entire lives, and the pods are basically a mother and 4 to 5 generations of children and their children. The males will break off to mate with other pods, but they always come back. The pods are parts of larger clans going back ancestrally, and they'll go back and like meet up with other pods that are in their clan, and then they like interact with each other and like dance and swim around and share food and make
Sing.
happy noises, and they sing to each other.
It's a pod party. Is what you're saying?
It's a pod party, and I think that that's really great.
Pod party.
It's really cool that they can they conceptualize this sort of like relatedness to each other in some way. And I don't know, it's kind of reminds me of, can you imagine being like a little baby orca and you go along? It's just like when you're meeting your like distant cousins for the first time as a kid. Like your mom is bringing you to some aunt's funeral and they're like, oh yeah, these are your second cousins. And you're like,
Jesus.
oh, hey, what's up?
Any other situation? Just
A family reunion or a wedding or
like Uncle Jim is dead. Get over here.
I've never even met Uncle Jim.
and your aunts and uncles are like, I remember when you were born and you were this big. And you're like, I've never met you before in my entire life.
You smell like tomatoes. I don't like
Yeah, so imagine that, but just you're an orca.
I used to change your diaper. Who the fuck are you?
Except for this time. Except for you're like, because that's like how their vocalizations sound.
Exactly.
Exactly. Yeah.
Can everyone please just make their best whale noise right now, please? Their best orca noise.
Hey, it's me, Mr. Orca. I'm swimming here.
I was waiting for that. I knew that was coming. I'm an orca swimming in the ocean. I worked at 9/11. Okay, keep going.
I'm a borca. My name is Bo and I'm an orca. It's a borca.
Oh, okay.
Christopher
Borga.
Orkin. Okay.
What would Werner Herzog sound like?
Oh, God damn it. I knew that was God. Werner Ork.
I like it.
Orca
I allow
Herzog.
it.
I imagine Werner
It's going to be
Herzog
a
probably likes
historic
orcas.
day in this podcast if we don't mention Werner Herzog.
It will never not happen.
Mm-hmm.
Ever.
So the transient ones are more migratory than the resident orcas, which is, makes sense. This is the type that lives in the Atlantic, and the pods are smaller, which is usually just a mother and her children. So it's only like 4 or 5 whales in a pod. And the males rove around and don't have a pod. Excuse me, I just got really burpy.
Bachelor males. That's pretty common in a lot of different animal groups. Bachelor males.
So the transient orcas have these sorts of like bachelor males just roving around. I think it probably has something to do with how like migratory they are. But they just fuck around the oceans and eventually, join this pod, leave, join that pod, leave, have a baby here, leave, have a baby there, leave. There's
So
a
they're my
deadbeat dads
father.
at the orca world. I wasn't going to be the one to say it. Then sometimes the pods all get together, like 200 of them will go around and fuck up like a million seals. And that's kind of cool. There's also a type of orca that feeds mainly on baleen whales. So do you know the different kinds of whales? Do you know what baleen is?
Orcas aren't even whales, right?
So orcas are technically the biggest dolphin, which is a whale, basically. They're all what's called cetaceans. But, well, no, because when I was looking it up, there's cetaceans are broken up into 2 types. There's the baleen whales and then there's the toothed whales. And dolphins are part of the toothed whales.
Gotcha.
And like other kinds of toothed whales it's basically dolphins and it's sperm whales are the toothed whales. And then the baleen whales have all the other kinds of whales like blue whales, right whales, gray whales. And so they are the big filter feeding whales, like a humpback whale. And so instead of having like teeth as we conceptualize teeth, they've got these hard structures in their mouth called baleen, which are essentially big filters. And so they like open their mouths really wide and suck in a bunch of water with like plankton or krill or like little shrimpies in it. And then they use their tongues to push all the water through the baleen, just leaving behind the, little shrimpies that they were eating. And then they swallow it all down. And so they just have the gross baleen. And that is what people
Did you say the gross baleen?
Have you seen baleen? It's gross.
I've seen it, yeah. Well, rude for you to call it gross, but okay.
And so when people refer to whalebone, like, have you ever heard somebody talk about like
Whalebone
Victorian
corsets.
corsets? Yeah, whalebone corsets in like the Victoria era.
A whalebone hairbrush.
That is the whalebone in the corsets is actually baleen.
They should call it whale mouth corsets.
Yeah, whale mouth corsets. So orcas, there are orcas that feed mainly on baleen whales, and a lot of the time that's just comes down to finding a baby and like yanking it and swimming away before anyone can get them, which is kind of sad. But when I was doing research for this, I found a video on YouTube of 75 orcas taking down a blue whale, like a fully grown blue whale. It's like 75 orcas just tore it apart. It was a bloodbath.
Blue whales are the biggest whales.
Yeah, blue whales are not only the biggest whale, but they're the biggest animal to ever exist if you look at them by weight.
Dang, orcas.
Yeah.
Are blue whales the nice ones, or those whale sharks?
Well, whale sharks are sharks, but blue whales are nice. They're peaceful. I don't think a blue whale has ever not been chill.
Whale sharks are sharks?
Yeah, whale sharks are sharks.
Then why are they called whale?
Because they're real big.
They're really big and they feed like whales. So
they do
like,
the filter feeding?
So they
whale sharks
feed
do the
like
filter feeding
whales.
thing.
They're as big as a whale. They look like a whale. I think some scientist is being a fucking asshole.
Well, they have gills and they're a fish.
Yeah. Whales breathe air, Andrew.
Okay, look, I'm not going to get into the semantics of what whales do, but that's a fucking whale.
They got a blowhole.
I'll give you a blowhole. Ah.
If it looks like a duck and quacks like a duck, it's a whale.
It looks like a duck and it quacks like a duck. It's a goddamn shark. No, get the fuck out of here.
So researching this now, looking into these orcas that feed on baleen whales, I actually found a really interesting story about a whaling town in Australia that cooperated with a pod of orcas that lived off of the town. So this was, they called them the Killers of Eden. Have you heard this story, Bo?
I have not.
That name's pretty fucking dope.
Yeah, the Killers of Eden.
That sounds like a sweet alternative rock band name.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah, it does. That's a good one. The port city was called Eden because, Europeans go to a place and they name it something biblical. And so this was a pod of orcas.
Material, you losers.
Yeah. This was a pod of orca that was led by, well, it wasn't led by, but there was a large one in the pod that was like the most charismatic, who was named Old Tom. And Old Tom would effectively show up at the mouth of the river that Eden was on and would start breaching and tail slapping and like jumping out of the water and making a big show to effectively let the sailors know that there was a whale out in the ocean that they should go get. And so this, according to the local legend, this started around 1860. Anywhere else in the world, the whalers would have gone for and started killing the orcas as well. But they had essentially pressed into service a large amount of the local indigenous people from the UN group, the UN Indigenous Australian group, who had a sacred relationship with the orcas. They, like a lot of different people around the world, saw the orcas as very important beings, especially ones that were not to be messed with. And so they essentially were like, if you attack these orcas, we're not going to work for you. Like, that's not going to happen. We're going to leave. And so they decided to not kill the orcas. Eventually, they realized that Old Tom was leading them to baleen whales that they could, hunt the way that whalers do. So Old Tom would lead them out into the ocean where the rest of his pod was waiting and basically get them right up to where the baleen whales were. And then the whalers would harpoon the whales, and then they were hauling the whales back into back to the port to process the whale carcasses. And the orcas would grab the ropes in their teeth to help haul them back.
The hell?
That sounds made up, but okay.
Yeah, that sounds made up.
It's not. It's when Old Tom died, his skeleton was put in the local museum, and you can see the wear marks from carrying ropes in his teeth.
What were the orcas getting out of this deal?
So to repay the orcas, they would leave the carcass out in the port overnight, and let the orcas eat the tongue and the lips of the whale, which is what they really wanted. I guess maybe it's the tastiest part, going back to tongues. They would eat the tongue and lips of the whale, and then they would eat all of the birds and fish that showed up for scraps of the whale.
Ah.
And so they called it the law of the tongue.
That's wild.
Mm-hmm. That's
nuts.
The humans got baleen whale, so they got whale oil, they got blubber, and the orcas got to eat some whale tongue and all of the like birds and fish and stuff that showed up. Speaking of that, have you ever seen the videos of the captive orcas that would take the fish that they were being given and then like hide it under their tongue for a little while and then spit it out onto the ground next to the pool? And then when a seagull came down to pick up that fish, they would burst out of the water and eat the seagull.
I've seen that.
I've also seen that. Yeah.
So this
The
relationship,
whole, the like something from the sea eating something from the sky really makes me laugh.
right? That's
Like, you swim in the ocean, you fly. You're not supposed to be near each other, let alone eat each other. That's okay. Go for it, you crazy kids.
So according to the local legend, this started in 1860. And then it started kind of, this was basically after the prime of the global whaling industry. This was around the time that whale stock was really being depleted all around the world because everyone was whaling way too hardcore. And so after around the turn of the century, the whales started showing up less. And in 1901, an orca was stranded on the beach, and instead of trying to get it back into the water, they just killed it. And so most of the indigenous workforce quit and left after that. And then the whales started showing up less. But Old Tom would still show up every year, and he would, show up at the port and start jumping out of the water and tail slapping and like asking for attention and going out swimming with all the boats. And eventually he started showing up without the rest of his pod. And it was hypothesized that whalers up north, like the northern parts of Australia, had killed the rest of his pod because in most of the rest of the world, whalers feared orcas and saw them as competition because the orcas were also killing the baleen whales that they wanted. And then finally, in 1930, Old Tom was still around, and the whalers broke the law of the tongue.
No, they killed Old Tom?
They didn't kill Old Tom, but what happened was they didn't want to leave the whale carcass out overnight because there was a storm. They didn't want to lose the carcass. And so they pulled it up. But Tom was fighting them by holding the lines in his mouth and trying to swim away. And they ended up breaking some of his teeth.
Those fuckers.
And a few months later, his body washed up on shore, and he had abscesses in his jaw.
Oh.
And he probably starved to death because of his broken teeth.
Tom, that's what he gets for 60 years of service.
Right? Poor guy. And so, mostly out of guilt, they preserved his skeleton and keep it up in the local museum with like a plaque about, how Old Tom basically made that town by telling them where all the whales were. And you can look, if you look at his skeleton, you can see marks in his teeth from like hauling the ropes and hauling the whales in.
I'm so sad.
Yeah. So I thought that was a really interesting story, and it was sad that it had a sad ending. But can you just imagine, like at the beginning of those whaling days, just like going out, like getting into your whale boat and rowing out to sea with a pod of killer whales who are helping you? Like, that's the coolest shit, man.
I can't imagine that at all. That sounds absolutely wild.
So I'm sorry that story had a sad ending, but I thought it had a really cool beginning at least. There's another whale who's called Old Tom, another orca, and he is actually still alive today. And his whole thing is that he doesn't have a pod. He's just a lone whale a lone orca who shows up at various places. He actually just showed up at Cape Cod a couple of days ago, and he was with like a whole party of dolphins. It seems like he's never seen with other orcas that often, but he is always hanging out with dolphins, which I think is funny. You were just talking about him, right? You probably know more about him than I do.
Old Tom? No, I just learned that he is a solo orca who researchers think like maybe does have a pod, but he'll like go hang out with his pod a little bit and then break off and have solo adventures where he goes and hangs out with various pods of dolphins. He's always seen with other dolphins and not really other orcas.
I wonder what that's about. But what do you think that's
fucking
about?
Wild.
He's just a fucking rebel without a cause, man. He just goes where the waves take him. Old Tom,
Yeah.
that's what they call him. There's legends about
Other
him. He's under the
orcas,
sea.
just like they're bringing him down, He
Yeah.
needs his bros to boost him up.
He doesn't want to conform to orca ways, That's what Old Tom does. Old Tom just goes.
Why is he
what
talking
Old
like
Tom
that?
does. Because he's Old Tom.
Seems like a real radical guy.
Yeah. Okay, well, the next part is because orcas are so social as animals and they really communicate with each other. You occasionally see things, researchers will occasionally see things happen where it doesn't really have any sort of benefit. There's no real reason for them to do it, but one of them will start doing some weird behavior and then it'll get communicated to a bunch of other orcas and they'll all be doing it for a little while and then abruptly they'll just kind of stop. So they call them fads. I mean, the same way that, people were stuffing themselves into phone booths in the 50s or, Beanie Babies in the 90s. It's just kind
fidget
of
spinners.
Yeah, fidget spinners in 2012 or whenever the hell that was. So let's do a dumpity chumpity. Which one of these is a real orca fad? What is it? What scientists dubbed the seal alley-oop, where one throws a seal carcass into the air and another tail slaps the seal back down to kill it?
I think I've actually seen that before.
That's real. Yeah, that's real.
Wearing a dead salmon as a hat or wrapping seaweed around this dorsal fin?
I'm going to go dead seal as a hat. That's my answer. Andy, what do you think? What do you think?
Yeah, I'm going hat too. Definitely hat.
He said salmon as a hat.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, hat.
Yeah, hat. Free hat. Free hat.
Yeah, free hat. It is the hat.
Yeah. Oh, that's two. We're 2 for 2. That's fucking good.
You're doing great this episode, guys. This is the Southern Reticent group in the Pacific. They only eat fish. They're one of the fish-eating orcas. And in 1987, one large female was observed swimming around with a dead salmon on her head. She was like swimming with her head out of the water, balancing a salmon on it. Then shortly after, more and like her whole pod was observed doing it. And then next thing they knew, 2 other pods were all swimming around with dead salmons on their head. And then just by the next summer,
it's called fashion, sweetie. Look it up.
It's called. Yeah, this is the salmon collection. This is a nice, fine John Q. salmon cloche hat, which fits perfectly on my head.
Salmon by Orca.
But then by the next summer, they just stopped doing it. So like for less than a year,
that was so embarrassing when we always used to put salmons on our heads. Oh my God.
Can you remember? They look at old pictures of themselves. They're like, oh my God, you remember we were all wearing the salmon.
We've all done that. We like, oh my God, remember that time I had a faux hawk? Gross.
And I had a salmon on my head, as was the style at the time.
And they show it to their kids and they're like, gross, Grandpa Orc. And he's like, whoa.
And then the last story that I wanted to talk about is a pair of orcas named Port and Starboard, which I think is really cute.
Okay.
That's an adorable name for a pair of orcas.
Right. It's really cute. So they are often seen off the coast of South Africa in a place called False Bay.
South Africa.
And they're 2 male orcas who I don't know if they came from the same pod or if they split off from different pods and are just kind of like meeting up at South Africa. But what they really like to do is demolish sharks. But they only eat the livers. And so they're older males who are
kind of fucked up.
It's kind of fucked up, right? And so they're older males and they're easily identified from shore because they both have collapsed dorsal fins. Just basically as they get old, sometimes, and I think it's partially genetic as well, but the collagen that keeps their dorsal fin straight up will just kind of break down and the fin will collapse.
Insert old man Viagra joke here. Okay, move on.
Exactly. But so it makes them easily identifiable from shore. And they first showed up in 2015 and they go up and they just hang out together and go on rampages and kill like 15 sharks in an hour or 2. And they only eat the liver. And from what I've read, sharks have a very big liver. A shark's liver is up to 1/3 of their body. And it's a really fatty, good meat. And so, I mean, it's understandable, I guess, that they would eat the liver. But what's weird to me is that they only eat the liver. And they like break it up into just like with surgical precision that you wouldn't expect from an animal that doesn't have hands, you know?
Huh.
So a lot of the times, even if they aren't directly observed going on these shark rampages, the shark carcasses will just wash up on shore and the livers will just be gone. And people are like, oh, Port and Starboard are here.
That's so funny.
Dude,
there was one time where
orcas are fucking metal. I fucking love them.
Do you think Port's original name was Larbird, but call back previous episode.
It got too confusing.
He is pretty old, so it's possible. So so it's believed that they are from a transient pod, but decided to stop and chill out when they realized how tasty the sharks are. They are
just the
one
livers.
or both.
Only
one or
how'd
both
they
are
figure that out?
observed.
They're like, hey man, check out that thing. That liver is fucking delicious. Let's kill it.
That they've been teaching it to other orcas that show up around the area. I don't remember which one it was, but one of them was seen with a pot of like 9 other orcas murdering just tons of sharks and eating the livers, and just like teaching them about the concept. There was one like viral shark who had like a tag and was like, you could go online and track her, and her name was Khaleesi, and one of them ate her liver. She just washed up on shore with liverless one day.
Wow.
Because they're hardcore.
They go around to all the other orcas and are like, okay, listen, hear me out. I know it sounds wild, but just the livers of, so good, delicious. You can eat like 15 in a day.
And so they eat 7, primarily they eat the 7-gill shark and the white shark. And so False Bay used to be infamous for having hundreds and hundreds of shark sightings a year. But by 2020, they dropped to basically 0 white shark sightings, because I don't think it's that they ate all of the sharks, but rather that the sharks just completely avoid that area now. So I wonder where they'll move on to next. I'm sure they probably will move on to somewhere else, wherever the sharks are. But
once you get the taste of shark liver,
Yeah, these 2 old buddies following the shark population around the world, eating their livers.
Got the taste.
So those are all of my orca stories. And this is actually proving to be a relatively short episode. So I don't know if I should just go into the second part of my thing at this point.
Yeah, keep going.
Yeah, dog.
So this is these orcas attacking boats. It's not the first time that a whale has attacked a boat, but it is, in general, a pretty rare occurrence. It's not something that you often hear about is, a ship being sunk by a whale, but it has happened. Back in the olden days of whaling, and not really the olden days, but more like the 1890s or so, the gray whale, which is a baleen whale, used to be known as a devilfish because they were super scary and they would smash boats. But since they began being protected in the 30s and no more hunting was allowed of them, they've actually become super nice and are now really famous for being the type of whale that'll come up really close to boats and let people touch them and let people touch their tongues. Apparently these wild gray whales are telling people to touch their tongues, just like so I guess tongue touching is just a thing. A lot of tongue talk this episode.
Whales like their tongue touched. I don't know what you want.
And so whales live a really long time, so it's even possible that some of the whales who were alive during this devilfish era could have noticed the change and like taught their kids that like it was okay now, or maybe it's even just the kids who never knew the dangerous times being like, Dad, it's fine. They'll touch your tongue now.
I think that's really poignant that like they were known as devilfish, more freaking white people just tacking devil onto stuff. But they were all like aggressive.
We've talked about that so much over the last 20 episodes. White people they love the devil, but they also hate the devil.
Yeah.
They love to hate the devil, but like they were aggressive because they were being murdered and genocided. But once it was like, hey, let's not kill these animals anymore, they were like, oh, okay, everything's fine. We're just cute little sea puppies now. Now that you're not murdering us all the time, it's actually pretty chill. Like they're devilfish. No, they just don't want you to kill them, please.
Yeah, exactly.
Pretty simple. Just don't do that.
So the next part of this that I have, and which I think is probably an entire episode's worth on its own. So I don't know if I should just keep going or if we should stop now. But I want to talk about the Essex, which was the first recorded ship to be sunk by a whale and by far the worst.
The most famous in history, you could say.
The most famous, the one that resulted in the most deaths indirectly. Should I just keep going or should I stop?
Go for another 10 minutes.
Okay. I don't know where to end it is the only problem.
I think you can do it.
Okay. I'll just keep
or
going.
Just tell us one more cool story.
Well,
do
you want all the stories
give us a cool story. We can do some little rants and then we can say goodbye.
Well, I told you all the stories that I had written down.
Oh, okay. Well, did you ever see that video of on YouTube with those great the orcas killing that great white? That was pretty cool.
Why don't you tell me about it, baby?
Well, so these orcas killed a great white.
Whoa.
There you go. That's it.
Wow.
Would you ever swim with wild orcas?
Yes, I would. I 100% trust them, and I 100% would.
Yeah,
being that no one has died from an orca
that we know of.
I would. That we know of.
Well, I think
that's true. Like no one's like I did, but they'd be dead.
Hi, dude. You're alive. Oh,
I absolutely would. I would absolutely. I would absolutely
I feel like I don't need to be in the ocean with them. Like, the ocean is their domain. The land is mine. Like, I'll watch them from the boat, but like, I don't need to get in the water with them.
I wouldn't mind.
I tell you what,
Like,
you're in a kayak. You're in a kayak and you're just chilling with them.
That's so scary. I would be more okay with that than being in the water.
Really?
I see. I would love like a little situation where it's a SeaWorld situation, but like the tank opens into the ocean, so the whale just comes in when he wants to go. Right? You know, like if he's in the big old tank, right? He's like chilling, like, hey, I'm gonna come stay up. I'm gonna come join you, Mr. Orca. Like, hey, let's go swimming for a bit. And when he's done, I'm done. He goes back his way to the ocean. I go back to land.
Are these personal, private boho showings, or are they like for other people too?
No, just me, because I'm a millionaire at this point.
Oh, okay. I see. I see.
Okay.
He's a millionaire, yeah.
In your fantasies.
Yeah, you guys can come if you want, I guess, but kind of.
And Zach, you told me that orcas have, while they've never killed anyone, there have been like aggressive interactions between humans and orcas, right?
Yeah, there've been a couple of times.
Boats?
Other than the boats, there's been a couple of times that I noticed that I saw where people were in orcas' territory and they like, gave them little warnings. So there was one time when the explorers were going across Antarctica, and I think it was like they were trying to cross Antarctica in like the 10s or the 20s, and they were on like an ice floe out in the water, and they said that an orca started coming up from below and trying to topple over the ice floe while they were on it. But I can see that as being like the orca thought that they were seals or something.
Yeah, because I like those old nature documentaries, watching those motherfuckers just hit the rock trying to get them over. It's like
they generate waves too to try and like flip it.
Exactly. They're so fucking cool.
Yeah, it's just the same as like sharks, where a shark attack is never really a shark attack. In most cases, it's just the shark being like, I don't know what this is. I'm going to swim around it for a little while. It's kind of maybe a seal. I mostly eat seals. Is this food? It looks kind of like food, but I've never seen anything that looks exactly like it before. Yep. Okay, let me give it a taste. Let me give it a taste, see what it is. And the only problem is that a shark's mouth is incredibly dangerous for us, and they don't know that.
Yeah.
The shark's mouth is just its primary way of interacting with the world around it.
I'd give my shark a finger so he'd leave me alone. Like, here, shark, here, take a bite. No, oh, you don't like it? Okay, see? We're good. And me and the shark swim away, become best friends. Then you can see me
I would
again.
definitely be best friends with a shark.
I wish I could be best friends with an orca and we could swim around in the ocean together. That would be so cool.
Just hanging on his dorsal fin.
So cool.
He does a little jump in the water. I'm holding on to him. It's like, yay.
Yeah.
That's my imagination. God, it was so cool.
And like when you're done, like they're just kind of hanging out near the surface and you're just like lounging on their back out of the water, just like taking a little nap.
He's just chilling there. He's beached. But it's a good beach, you know, because you ever seen them beach to get a seal before? It's really fucking cool.
Yeah.
And then they just go on their separate ways, and we give him a head nod. Sun setting, I give him a head nod. He floats back in, and I walk away. Me and my friend Orca.
Just a couple of days ago, there was one of the biggest sightings of orcas in Monterey Bay. There was like a pod of, I don't know, it was like 30 or something orcas, and they were playing in the bay for like hours, jumping, doing flips and shit.
Oh, it's so cool.
Pretty fun.
It's really cute.
Sight to
I
see.
love how they're like the most dangerous motherfuckers in the ocean, but they're also like not too cool to just like dance around and do flips and like sing songs to each other.
And
they're
one
like,
of the
they're like us, but we have guns.
got thumbs.
Oh my god, a orca with a gun?
Oh, fuck.
Be unstoppable.
One of the orcas that was playing around doing flips in Monterey Bay was also a part of a pod of orcas that was seen like last week or last month, attacking 2 gray whales and eating them
With a gun?
with a gun. Not a shotgun. I don't know.
I see. Apparently in 1958, an orca attacked a fishing boat after it hit it with a harpoon. And the whale got free and chased the vessel for some time. And at one point...
catch these fins, bro.
Yeah, hey, bro.
And at one point, it lifted the boat clear out of the water.
Oh my God. Mess with me? You're gonna mess with me? This is my house. Don't mess with orca. That's all I have to say.
Mm-hmm.
It's my catchphrase.
Oh.
Hey, don't mess with Orca.
In the 80s, a researcher published an article about how he was attacked by an orca on a beach because he was watching it beach itself to catch sea lions and then go back into the ocean, and it mistook him for a sea lion, and it missed him by like a couple of feet.
Oh,
Oh my god.
That's not the orca's fault. Don't be
No.
that close to it. That seems like its fault.
Don't be that close. That is your fault,
This
sir.
dangerous beast is hunting. Let's get closer to see.
Let me just go on this beach. No.
You fool. Pretty cool. You know that their eyes are the size of dinner plates?
Are they?
Yeah, they've got big eyes. You wouldn't expect it.
Because they're always hungry.
Yeah.
That was a joke.
Yeah,
Yeah,
was.
hungry for
Because the
shark
eyes
liver
of-
if you're port and starboard.
They're so cool. Or whales are technically deer.
No.
Okay.
Well, whales are even-toed ungulates, and so are deer. They're just aquatic even-toed ungulates.
And they like murder stuff. When was the last time you saw a deer take down anything?
Well, you know what is also an even-toed ungulate is a bison.
Hmm.
So you could say that an orca is a bison.
Isn't a rhino close to the? Isn't a rhino close to all that too? I want to say. I don't know why I heard something like that. Rhino's close to some aquatic creature. Am I making that shit up? Am I just rambling? Oh my god! Did I just create something?
I think that sounds right.
Yeah. Hold on. Let's see. I'm not googling anything. I'm just saying. Let's see.
But if you look at a whale skeleton, you can see it has little. Well, I mean, the fins obviously have hands. The fins are basically hands, which is like weird. Oh, I guess they're not fins; they're flippers. But they're adapted flippers. So if you look at them under an X-ray, they've got fingers, and they've got like the same structure of fingers as a deer, which is wild.
They don't got no hooves.
Well, no, obviously they don't have hooves, but they have weird little vestigial legs inside their body,
Yeah.
which is also weird.
The whole thing about whales breathing air in the ocean really weirds me out, though. Like, I love them, don't get me wrong. Why are you breathing air when you live in the water? You're telling me you hold your breath all the time?
Dude, if I could hold my breath for that long, I would totally be living in the water.
I mean, yeah, if I had the sort of adaptations that would let me spend 45 minutes underwater, you'd never see me
I mean,
again.
yeah, I do it.
I found a sea rhinoceros. It's from an episode of SpongeBob.
So you're just equating SpongeBob with real life again?
I want to say, like, how many times I passed tests before in class because of actually The Simpsons, if they did like a parody episode or they did a retelling stories or something like that. Like, I remember I missed a couple days of school and then I forgot what it was. It was Joan of Arc, right? And I remember they did a little spoof on it one time, but I got the answers right because of The Simpsons. It happened more than once, too. It was great. That's just me rambling, though.
Well, tune in next time to hear the full story of the whale ship Essex.
The full story of the whale ship Essex. And also what it was like to be a whaler in Nantucket at the time. Why you might want to be a whaler. Why Nantucket was so focused on whaling. And maybe one of the worst pranks I've ever heard of.
Jeez.
So I hope
Is
that
it,
you are
is it worse than the
enticed.
rose petals one?
Oh. We'll have to decide
Well,
then. Save it for the pod. Save it for the pod.
rose
Okay.
petal
Yeah,
one
yeah, for
didn't
sure,
result
for sure.
in anything going extinct.
Except for that one guy.
Yeah.
His whole family lineage.
Ash, take us out.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Get Dumped On, an Info Dump podcast, where we talked a little bit about everyone's favorite apex predator of the sea. I hope you learned a little something about our fishy friends. If you like this episode and you want to listen to more, please do that. You can follow us on the social medias, Get Dumped On Pod on Instagram. You can send us an email at getdumpedonpodcast@gmail.com. Zach really wants an email, so if a listener out there could just send an email of what their favorite thing about the most recent episode is, or a suggestion for a future episode, or even just saying, hey, howdy do.
Or my
Don't
own request.
say it, Bo.
Or my
Don't
request.
say it.
Loads.
If you're listening to this right now, thank you so much for listening. Like, you have no idea how much we appreciate that people are actually like listening to this.
Hi, Justin.
Hey,
Hi,
Justin.
Hi, Kate.
Fuck you, Justin.
Hey, Kate. Hello, everyone, all our international listeners, not from the United States. Thank you so much for
Mhm.
listening.
Yeah, thank you so much for listening. And yet we haven't received a single email.
Yeah, so
if
come
you're
on, do
listening to
your
this,
part. Silence is violence.
Do it for Zach.
Send us,
Do it for
send us
Zach.
emails.
Silence is violence. you fucker.
please send us an email.
And tune in next time for the full story of the whale ship Essex. You have a great rest of your day now.
Ash and Zach are super smart. They went to college and learned a bunch of stuff. And Bo and Andrew didn't go to college because that's the way life goes sometimes. What happens when you put them together and you try to make them learn? grab your friends, let's listen together on Get Dumped on an Info Dump podcast.
Please
See
email
ya.
me.
Okay, bye. How about bye?
You know,
How about
you know,
bye?
you know what you need to email
Bye.
me.
How about bye? Bye.
Email
Bye.
me it.
Bye. How about
I
bye?
wanna see
Ignore
it.
both. Goodbye. Goodbye. How about bye?
God damn,
That's
I hate
my-
that.
I hated
That's
that.
my whale
I
noise.
hated that.
Don't make that the cold open.